Iran, the U.S., and Israel agreed to a 2-week ceasefire.
This really is the top story around the world right now. And so we have invited foreign policy expert Ron B. to talk about this ceasefire deal. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning.
Great to have you here in studio. Before you break down what's part of this agreement, do you think that President Trump's threat to have a civilization die, wiped out, had anything to do with an agreement being reached?
Possibly. It was an unfortunate set of comments, I thought, because the Islamic Republic is not Persian civilization. But it goes back 2,500 years to Cyrus the Great, who was a lot more lenient in his treatment of his population than the current one. But that being said, it wasn't aimed at us. It was aimed at the Islamic Republic. I think that it may have had something to do with it, but the basic thing that changed is that the Strait of Hormuz is going to open. And that was the short-term goal, to get that open. And so there are talks that will take place on Friday in Islamabad. The Pakistanis are serving as mediators for looking at a potential peace agreement. This is ceasefire, not a peace agreement. And a lot can happen over 2 weeks, including ceasefires don't tend to hold in the Middle East. But for right now, it's holding. And if the Strait of Hormuz opens, we've already seen gas prices go down in the marketplace today. Hopefully that continues.
I have so many questions for you.
I'm sure you do.
Everybody was waiting, right around that 5 o'clock mark here this time. In this area yesterday to see what was going to happen, and then the word came out of this ceasefire. What do we know about this agreement? And we've heard, the Pentagon updating us this morning. U.S. is declaring success. On the flip side, the Islamic regime is declaring success.
Right.
But there is a ceasefire, an agreement with a new regime.
There can't be a success unless there's a settlement to the problem, all the problems in Iran, including the future of the government that cannot be the Islamic Republic.
But they're talking to somebody who is still part of the Islamic Republic.
That's true. That's true. What level are we at now that the first 3 or 4 levels of leadership have been taken out? And there's 30, as you know, 31 provinces that all have some sort of independent say in the matter too. So it's far from over, but there's a cessation of hostilities. Number one, U.S. thinks it's hit most of the military targets. It's ahead of schedule. So this is not important militarily, but it is important to get the Strait of Hormuz open, where 25% of the world's oil passes through, and it has affected oil prices here in California as well.
President Trump said that the U.S. would work with Iran to remove enriched uranium. Do you think that Iran would agree to something like this?
Well, that's the big $64 million question, and that's part of the U.S. peace plan that will be discussed in Islamabad starting on Friday, 2 days from now. It will include getting rid of uranium enrichment. It will include limits on ballistic missiles. It will include no support for proxies. It will include recognition of the State of Israel. I'm not sure that the Islamic Republic is ready to do any of that.
Yeah, and that brings me to my next question. For anybody that is familiar with this regime, you know that there are a lot of lies that surround them, and when you look at the actual agreement of what they have set, how are they going to even agree to most of this, any of it?
Well, the devil's in the details, as you know, and the problem is getting that strait open so that oil prices can come down. It's even more important for places like Pakistan that are highly dependent on the oil through the strait. They also have a defense pact with Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia has been attacked. So it's high stakes all the way around. This is a ceasefire. It's not an end to hostility.
When you talk about that ceasefire and you talk about those attacks to Saudi Arabia, since this announcement was made, there have been multiple attacks since. So is there a certain starting time, or did it begin and these attacks are continuing to neighboring countries?
Well, it was supposed to start immediately. However, you know, the folks in the provinces may not have gotten the memo. Who's in charge? You know, if you've gone after the command and control of the country, the leadership may not have control over the country. It may be the IRGC, regional IRGC and Basij, that are deciding on their own what they do. So that's the problem when you've taken out the leadership who has the authority to impose a ceasefire.
Can we talk about Israel for just a second?
Of course, very important in fact.
Yeah, I mean, Israel is saying that this ceasefire does not include their war.
Lebanon.
Yeah, Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Yeah. They've got operations in southern Lebanon. They've occupied up to the Litani River. They are not going to stop their operations in Lebanon, although they will recognize the ceasefire in Iran.
I know a lot of this is surrounding the lack that they don't want Iranians to, or the Islamic regime to have nuclear weapons. This started, Ron, with the Iranian people wanting a change to this regime.
Correct.
And President Trump just said, the Iranian people think that we're going to desert them. We're not going to. But as they're waking up today and we're hearing from some of them who are speaking, they're even more worried that any sort of this regime in place will be even more dangerous for them in the future. Well,
that would be a worry, especially after 30,000 dead in the streets from the Islamic regime going after their own citizens. I don't blame them for worried about that. I don't think that the Trump administration is interested in seeing that recur. I think that this is just part and parcel of the negotiations that need to take place, even if they're unsuccessful in Islamabad.
Well, we're going to have to monitor these face-to-face meetings or meet that they're going to have.
Oh, it's very important, and you know, we've got 50,000 troops, many from San Diego. Marines, as well as the USS Abraham Lincoln is there, and so we've got a stake in the game here too.
Before we go, one more question, yes or no? Will this ceasefire hold?
No.
Ron B., we appreciate your time.